Welcome to today's KMWorld webinar, brought to you by Verint, Northern Light, Lucidworks, and Happeo. I'm Mary D. Ojala, Editor-in-Chief at KMWorld magazine, and I will be the moderator for today's broadcast. Our presentation today is titled Enabling Knowledge-Based AI. Now, before we get started, I want to explain how you can be a part of this broadcast. There will be a question and answer session, so if you have a question during the presentation, just type it into the question box provided and click on the submit button. We will try to get to as many questions as possible, but if your question has not been selected during the show, you will receive an email response to it within a few days. And now to introduce our speakers for today. John Schmay, Senior Director, KM Strategy, Verint. David Cease, CEO, Northern Light. Brian Land, Vice President, Sales Engineering, Lucidworks. And Antero Hanurova, Founder and Chief Innovation Officer, Happeo. And now let me pass the event over to John Schmay, Senior Director, KM Strategy, Verint. Go ahead, John.
Thanks, Mary D. And hello, everybody. I'm the Senior Director of Go-to-Market KM Strategy at Verint, as Mary D. just said. And Verint sells a lot of call center and self-service enablement products for the call support, contact center, digital market. We sell over 40 lines of product, and knowledge management is a stalwart product we've had for quite some time. And I'm going to share with you today one of our exciting new developments with using knowledge base with AI, and share with you some of the exciting things you can do with it in this brand new, brave new Gen AI world. So one of the things we're trying to tackle with one of our applications is the age-old question of how do I get my content into the knowledge base, and how do I start using it and get value now without having to go through a lengthy migration process? And the big issues are, how do I build my knowledge base? How do I connect all my stuff to my knowledge base and make sure it's all there? Get a great search experience across that content, and leverage those answers across my business. And by the way, I don't have 6 months to get involved with this, right? So what I want to be able to do is bring all my content objects into one search that summarizes the best answer quickly, and stand up such a knowledge base as fast as I can to start getting value from all those resources I have in my organization. And then as I want to bring knowledge into a more curated environment, how can I accelerate that process and so that things are being managed in the knowledge base and developed as knowledge objects quickly? And finally, where and how can I automate where knowledge is delivered based on the activity or request that's happening all over my business? So the way we think about our applications for AI is through the notion of bots. And bots are unique applications that provide and enable a particular task. Many or not most of our bots use AI. And so of our many bots, one of the ones that's most important for knowledge management, among other bots we have for knowledge management, is what we call the knowledge automation bot. And it's a really interesting approach to knowledge. You know, those of us that have been in this field a long time, I know I was resistant to the idea of, curating, presenting knowledge that hasn't been curated. But the fact of the matter is people are using knowledge that's not curated anyways as they search their own company resources, try to answer questions. And with Gen AI and the new capabilities of technology, we can actually bring the right answers into play in knowledge without having to necessarily curate all this information. And in a call center, if I can find and use the right information, it can increase the amount of capacity, the amount of calls that the organization can take quite dramatically. Because, in fact, in a knowledge base for support environment, the amount of time you have to spend is quite limited. You only have a matter of minutes, maybe even seconds, to deliver the right answer. And so the faster you can get access to that answer and not have to sift through a lot of information, the more benefits you'll see. And we've seen it drive already a 20% increase by more agents being able to answer more calls accurately and quickly. And Verint Knowledge Management can certainly be included in this offering to give you the full range of authoring, workflow, reporting capabilities. But I want to examine this knowledge automation bot a little more closely. Let's just be clear what we're trying to solve for. Organizations have lots of great content, but some of it's spread across other sources, and some of it's not really ready for prime time by itself. SharePoint resources or things that might be out on a file share. And so organizations that want to completely bring all of that into the knowledge base, and some talk about it, have to figure out what their design of that content is, how to normalize it when it comes in the knowledge base, figure out all the places to go search it. And then even if they get that done, when there's new content sources, they have to figure that out. The knowledge automation bot allows you to deliver value immediately across what you already have and expand to additional sources. And it's the first step to re-architecting knowledge management. And I'll talk about that in a minute. Let's just look a little more closely at how it works. So what you do is you connect the bot and you index information from across the relevant sources from the enterprise. And so you get a very simple agent experience using generative AI, a specific component of it that brings back and summarizes the content into direct answers. And so you can bring this content into play and immediately start getting answers that you can deliver from those various components of information. And that's different from saying, I'm just going to summarize one content object like Gen AI, like ChatGPT might do. You use only your internal resources from your organization if you want to get only compliant answers, so you can be sure you don't get any hallucinations. And you can start to deliver the type of experience a lot of support customers need, which is, I just need an answer to this question. I don't need you to research a whole bunch of stuff. I just need an answer. So I'll show a couple of screens of how this works. You got a unified search across all your knowledge sources. You summarize it by Gen AI and you curate it, you bring it into the contact center, and then you save with the high quality answers. So over here, as the bot is showing, there's a search, and then you've got the Gen AI answer coming back, and then there's the answers that were used coming back. Let me show you a little more accurate, a little more complete view of that. And this is using RAG processing, which is known as retrieval augmented generation. For those of you that may not have heard that term, it means I'm going to retrieve my text and find my best answers. Then I'm going to send those answers off to a large language model and bring back the most focused and relevant answer from those resources. So here the question is about how to get an iPhone battery replaced, and there's various content objects. 3 of them were picked from the collection, from the top results in the collection: battery replacement, iPhone battery replacement, iPhone battery. Because in the case where you're trying to replace a battery, you might have FAQ, you might have a process, you might have a specification, and it takes the relevant extract from those content objects and gives it back to you in a very concise answer. So you can get the answer quickly if that solves the question entirely, and or you can go ahead and look at these resources more carefully and figure out what you need. So you get the best of both worlds. You go ahead and get your great search results from good search, but you can also get the answer that you need right at the moment. And there's a huge advantage here, because the answer that often comes back from a generative AI search is usually prescriptive and direct. It doesn't contain a lot of sort of the background info and some of the other information that may make it harder for a support agent to read and provide in customer language. So if they need more of that, they go to the source documents that may have a lot more information. There's a lot of benefit to that. But let's be clear. I get my answer, I get my reasoning, and I get my top related content. So all of these are working together to provide a good agent experience to maximize the customer satisfaction and the efficiency with which they can provide answers. Now, I want to be clear that this is not the silver bullet. You are trying to make it easier to get things going in the knowledge base and start to show value right away. And you don't throw away the notion of content curation. It's just that you move it to the second part of the process. You don't have to get everything figured out before you can start getting value. And so when content curation is required, you add the knowledge management to the back end of the bot, and then knowledge management can give you all the rich curation you need. Now, this whole way of thinking is very different than the way we've thought about knowledge management for a long time, which is you got to have the content resources and curate them as the experience. And this is now saying the experience will help you figure out how you want to curate content. So you get feedback from folks on what the answers are. You've got some good reporting tools where we can show you exactly what's working and what's not. We've got another AI bot called the knowledge creation bot that helps you jumpstart information. And so the difference, and I've used to recommend this even in the standard days of knowledge management before AI, which was get some of your content in the knowledge base. So now it can be used by the superior search and knowledge base. Now you can tag it up and use it in relevant ways and start to see if this content works the way you want. instead of trying to get all your stuff in there before you figure out you haven't quite structured it properly. That philosophy is what I think is operative here, which is I want to get my content in, start using it, let my users and my customers tell me whether I need to curate this information or not. A lot of content migration efforts take a lot of extra time curating things that may or may not be relevant to the types of customer calls you have. So this mitigates that issue, and also, as I said, starts to deliver targeted value quickly and give you answers where they're needed. So we've seen a lot of benefit from this. You can already start reducing average call duration incredibly effectively, because I once did a presentation where I talked about what knowledge management is. You take a few seconds to craft a search. You might take maybe the better part of a minute to read through your results, and then the rest of the time is spent reading before you deliver an answer. So the more we can shorten that reading time and get you the right answer right away, that much faster and more effectively you can do your job. So in summary, our whole philosophy is enabled by these types of AI tools. I can drive knowledge relevance, and I can push knowledge out to other parts of my organization. I can leverage the AI platform in what we call Da Vinci to expand our capabilities to other channels. We can help people find information fast, and we can leverage these tools to optimize the quality and relevance of the knowledge-based results, not only in real time through the knowledge automation bot, but also in curation activities that make the results from that automation bot even stronger and more relevant. And finally, we have a whole ecosystem of dozens of products that have connections to each other, many of which push knowledge out to self-service and IVA and the agent desktop and community and social channels, because knowledge is the engine that drives the CCaaS supported application. And so we're excited about how we're able to fold AI directly into the workflow and needs of our support community. So I want to thank you for the ability to chat that with you, and I hope those of you who come to KMWorld will come look us up on the support floor. Back to you, Marianne.
Let's move on to Brian Land, Vice President, Sales Engineering, Lucidworks. Your turn, Brian.
All right. Sounds good. Do you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Awesome. Well, thanks, everyone. Thanks for joining. So I'm going to do a quick review of how we're helping enterprise knowledge management use cases in the AI era. So I lead our solutions engineering team here at Lucidworks. I've been here 6 years. Started with Endeca 20 years ago, but it is around knowledge discovery, AI powered search and discovery. And that's what led me here to Lucidworks when I joined 6 years ago was, all right, I knew search. And that's like, if you can think about enterprise search, customer search, self-service, but we were the first to market using AI, and that was traditional machine learning. And but now with the advent of Gen AI, we're now over 2 years in our Gen AI journey. We have over 100 customers experimenting with it, and a few are also live with it today. And we'll go over some use cases and also what to watch out for, potential pitfalls in that journey. So this is a search platform, enterprise grade. Most of our customers are in the Fortune 2000. And there are a lot of capabilities that you need to think about. And if I go to the next slide here, we'll talk about some of the use cases there. But the goal is to really help the employees find things faster. You know, they're used to like the Google experience, the Amazon experience. I'm not sure how many times I've been asked, hey, we want this type of experience with our enterprise data. It's going to help employee productivity and improve customer service. Really, I mean, think about finding not just the answer on the first position, but it's not just a search result, right? You think about search in the legacy search. You have a search box, you have search results. It's also other things like generative responses. I'm not sure if you've noticed, but in the last year or so, Google has actually tried to answer your question when you search on google.com. It'll actually pull a piece of the answer from a document. That could be a 20-page document in the top of the results. So this is very similar to what we're doing for enterprises, but we're securing it down with the enterprise data and make sure there's no data leakage, make sure there's security entitlement. So there's a lot there that needs to be controlled and contained so you can have those guardrails in place. It's very important. You can't just throw it to ChatGPT and have your employees ask those types of questions. But here's a quick screenshot of one of the examples. We actually have about 20 AI use cases, but this is one that's getting a lot of getting a lot of acceptance and a lot of excitement around a conversational search experience. And the conversation, I mean, the other example is ChatGPT. Like, you can ask it a question, you can say, go further, refine more in this buyer persona, ask. And so it's back and forth. And these large language models are really good at that. So we're doing that with enterprise data, but again, putting the security controls, no data leakage, even using a private large language model, which I'll talk about here in a couple of slides. But I just had an example here. We crawled some SharePoint and website and Windows files, but I asked, what's the difference between the Gartner and Forrester reports about Lucidworks? And the search results are cut off at the bottom, so you don't see that in the screenshot here. But at the very top, it's the Gen AI is answering the question for you. So it's just like John was talking about RAG. We also deploy RAG in every single use case. That's retrieval. So we're part of the retrieval. Find the top documents to answer that question. That's really important. That's probably one of the most important things about doing Gen AI for enterprise. You want to take the top document or a few documents to answer the question, but also provide the sources. You'll see the arrow at the bottom. These are the source docs. How did I find this answer? Trust and credibility is also really important. A lot of news out there how ChatGPT and other large language models have hallucinations. They have confidence, right, in the answer, but it was the wrong answer. You can't have wrong answers. You want to empower your employees with data, with answers, and they're verifiable. So these are the types of use cases we're building. The middle one is, or the middle arrow there, is around follow-up questions. So that's a conversational piece. Can I ask another question? Can I dive deeper with, it's very similar to ChatGPT, but we can even preload questions, like those next 3 questions in the light blue there are automatically generated using the same prompt. So we also have prompt engineering on staff. We can help you build these types of solutions. But, there is a path, there is a journey to doing this. Like I said, we're 2 years into our journey and we're helping 100 customers here, but defining the use case, selecting the right model. So, different models are good for different use cases and different even markets. And there's niche models, there's small models. So helping our customers choose the right model. You can integrate any model into Lucidworks. Integrate data sources. We have a large number of connectors, the trust and security as well. So make sure it's secure and private with your enterprise data and the access levels. So again, that's called security trimming. Make sure that an employee can't ask, like, who's going to be riffed next week, something like that. Like, you want to make sure that employees can only see the documents and data they're entitled to see. And cost controls is also one we'll get into, because these large language models can rack up your Gen AI costs. So there's some great ways to tune that down, control it, and get some metrics on it. And that's the last step, is track the business cases. You want to have KPIs in place, so you're measuring things. And so we'll get into each of these real quick. I won't spend too much time on each, but balancing the value and risk on defining the use case. One of the questions we ask is, where's friction in your information discovery journey there in your enterprise? So start with that, ensuring users are aware that they're talking to AI. So when you do have a response, we just have a quick screenshot. So here's an example. We do have results, search results at the bottom. When I search on something, we're generating an answer, but we're also putting the source links right in there so the employee can actually open up the document and read it. And so you want to make sure you incorporate those citations, incorporate the RAG, the retrieval piece of RAG especially. Those are making sure you have your top documents that are being fed to the Gen AI. And measure those things like read time, click-through rates, and even facet selection. That's going to help you, build better and better Gen AI type of applications. So the access level, the good thing is we've been doing high scale access control for well over 6 years. We have customers with 100,000 employees, hundreds of millions of documents, tens of thousands of access control lists that at scale we need to bundle into a search solution. And so we do the same thing with Gen AI. So we want to make sure that customers can't get an answer. And I know there's been some issues there with Microsoft and some other early adopters too with this type of entitlement access to data. So we have really refined this over the years, and it's the same approach with Gen AI. I want to make sure you can't answer questions you're not entitled to ask. And cost, like I mentioned earlier, cost is an important factor. What's the cost per query? If you're just doing a basic search query, that's very low. A year ago, it was, if you want to do a Gen AI type of query, is about 10x or 12x the cost of a regular search query. It's come down. So a lot of the LLM providers have reduced their cost per token, 1,000 tokens. And we offer LLM pricing as well. In fact, we do host models here at Lucidworks. We host private models, especially like Mistral and a lot of the top models on Hugging Face and Llama 3 from Meta. That's the latest model, open source, really good quality. That's another thing is you can get really high quality responses from a private open source model, and we can secure it, contain it, making sure that no public data, your enterprise data, doesn't get leaked to the public. And so I did talk a little bit about measurement. You want KPIs in place so that you're measuring things like the success indicators. There is A/B testing included with the platform, so you can even test 2 or 3 different models and what's the highest measurement, whether it be click-throughs, read rate, and things like that, but maybe at a lower cost. I just gave the example of Llama 3 may be good enough versus OpenAI, which can be very expensive. And finally, the Gen AI success is that an ensemble. Some of our customers call us an AI orchestration for search because we have all these capabilities, the connectors and the chunking and the semantic vector search, selecting any model, query embedding, and things like that. So we want to make sure and provide that really rich experience and really creating that ensemble for your users so they do get this modern experience for their employees, for their customers. It could be a customer service, external or even internal type of experience, but it's really all about the best fit for that purpose. So that's one of the reasons we provided that flexibility in our platform. So thank you very much. Appreciate it. Please, we'll hope to see you at KMWorld coming up. Lucidworks.com. You can also contact us through there. We'd be happy. Again, my team does the demos, POCs, and I'm sure someone on our team, myself, can speak with you. Well, all right. Thanks, Marianne. I'll turn it back to you.
Excellent. Thank you, Brian. And now let me pass the event back to David Cease, CEO, Northern Light. Go ahead, David.
Let me get started by talking about why do we care about generative AI at all. Northern Light's business focus is on business strategy applications, so competitive intelligence, market intelligence, market research, things of that nature. There has been a recent study done in the fall of last year, actually, by the Harvard Business School and BCG that examined the question of, can generative AI improve the quality of business strategy work? Amazingly, BCG loaned Harvard 758 management consultants for this study. I used to work at BCG, and I estimated the billing value of this study at about $15 million. It will never be repeated, this study. It is the definitive exercise in the application of generative AI to business strategy questions. The 758 consultants were divided up into 2 groups. One group was told use Gen AI. Another group was told don't use Gen AI. They were all given the same 18 business strategy questions, examining markets and competitors and products and making recommendations. And then the output of all 758 on the 18 business strategy assignments was measured on quantity and quality. And the result was the group using Gen AI finished their task 25% faster. That can be converted into an ROI metric, by the way. But even more importantly, with 40% higher quality. What is the value of 40% higher quality to your company for its product development decisions, its product marketing decisions, its key account sales presentations, its M&A decisions, business strategy decisions? 40% higher quality and 25% faster. This is why we care about generative AI. Now, but it's not that easy. But interestingly enough, the problem with generative AI application is not with the AI part. as Brian just illustrated, there are many different models out there that are commercially available that you can plug into really in less than a day. The AI part is easy. The hard part is the knowledge management and content aggregation problem. I recently went to a seminar at Google for their developers, and the first speaker on the first slide, the first bullet point, made the following: most machine learning projects fail at the content preparation step. They don't fail at the machine learning step. They fail at the content preparation step. This is even exacerbated for competitive intelligence, market intelligence type applications, because much of the information that is required to power a Gen AI application in those disciplines does not exist inside the company. Rather, it exists outside the company with industry and technology news, syndicated market intelligence, web sources, other content sets that are outside the company. Now, when those content sets are outside the company, how do you get them into your generative AI application? Most companies' IT departments are not skilled, experienced, don't have the tools, don't have the right mindset to aggregate successfully external content, which may be controlled by copyright or by licensing, and for which there are no simple ways to generate and aggregate the content. So on the one hand, it's extraordinarily valuable to use Gen AI in business strategy applications, and on the other hand, getting the content is extraordinarily difficult for those. Now, the solution, I think, as John initially pointed out, was that retrieval augmented generation is often used to try to solve the content management problem. So you really have two choices. You can train or fine-tune a model with your content where you get it all together in one giant batch and submit it to the training process. Or you can use retrieval augmented generation, where you generate a list of relevant documents from embedded content, you send the document text to the API of the large language model along with the user's question, and you prompt the model to answer the question only from the submitted content. But as you can see from the diagram, what is at the core of that is the ability to gather the text from the most relevant documents, and that's knowledge management. That's where knowledge management sits. And not only gather from the most relevant documents, but not from documents that are not high quality for the intended purpose. So retrieval augmented generation is a solution, and it is becoming pretty much a standard solution. Here are quotes from Oracle, Amazon, NVIDIA, IBM, Intel, and Microsoft, all endorsing retrieval augmented generation as the way to put generative AI into enterprise applications. Many of you I know work for companies using Copilot or testing Copilot or trialing Copilot from Microsoft. It is a retrieval augmented generation solution. So with that, why don't we consider the kinds of questions that generative AI can help answer? And really, questions are the heart of business use of generative AI, at least for business strategy. Questions like, what is my competitor's strategy? What are their partnerships? Are they gaining share? What new products have they released? Why don't we take a moment and actually look at a generative AI application in the business strategy area to illustrate the potential value of it. So I'm going to share my screen. Here is a knowledge management platform for competitive intelligence. I'm going to execute a query against a news database of the type that a competitive intelligence analyst might ask. So let's pretend we are working for a pharmaceutical company and that we want to know what partnerships our competitor has been forming in the market segment that we care about. And I will use AstraZeneca. I'll pick on AstraZeneca here. What partnerships has AstraZeneca announced in oncology? Question mark. Ask the question. And let's let it rip. We're searching a news database. There's a three-part response here. First, we generate a search result. relevance rank, so we know what the best documents are for this. Second thing we do, so we have the first hit here for medical marketing and media. This is traditional search. On the right-hand side, we have an answer from this document, medical marketing and media. We have an answer to this question. And as you can see from that document, it's talking about WPP. The second document announced a partnership with Merck for a particular set of drugs, and it goes on. The third step is we get an executive summary in the center here, which summarizes the answers from the documents on the right and has the advantage of consolidating observations when more than one document is contributing it. I would submit to you that this is the best first 20 seconds in business research I can possibly have. 20 seconds after I started my research, I have this report. I know what the issues are. I know which documents are best for me. I'm ready to click through to them by following the link here to consume them in all of their completeness. I understand the topology of all of the answers and players, etc. 20 seconds into my business research project, this is what I know. That's pretty terrific. So in conclusion, I'd like to just say that Gen AI provides the best imaginable first 20 seconds of a research project, much better business research outcomes. You can see how that happens. Insights from more documents, reallocation of time from scrounging through the search result to thinking about the meaning of the search result, and organizes the issue for the user. This is not a universal skill in the workforce, and having the Gen AI do that organization can be extremely helpful. And then my last comment is Gen AI is totally dependent on effective knowledge management, the ability to aggregate the right content and then serve it to the user, to the model on the fly, very quickly, generate the result. That's all knowledge management, and generative AI completely depends on it. It doesn't depend really on the models anymore. It depends on the knowledge management. And with that, I will turn it back over to Mary Dee. Thank you.
Thank you, David. And now let me pass the event over to Antero Hanharova.
All right, can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can.
Yes, good. All right, so hi everyone, I'm Antero. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer of Happeo, and it's my responsibility to manage the R&D and all the AI stuff inside Happeo. And what Happeo is we're an intranet platform. So we create an intranet that allows our customers to create, well, their intranets that look and feel like their own, that kind of really shows their brand and kind of like everything that they are. And the other thing that we do really well is manage knowledge, right? That's why we're all here. And we do it with a combination of different systems. So kind of like, obviously, kind of like as everyone else is doing, we also do AI search, but there's so much more in the background that needs to happen in order to make that really valuable and trustworthy also for all the end users. Because, you know, companies are different, people expect different things though. So we also need to consider multiple different things when we're creating something generic like a AI search. And what I want to share to you today is just a couple of the findings kind of when we were kind of starting building towards what we now call knowledge engine. And these findings are like, you might know this, right? But I think they're so valuable that I really think that kind of like you can get a lot out of these couple of things. So the first thing that we kind of realized when we started to build and kind of really think about like what do we want, like how do we want to use these systems? How do we want to use AI systems, LLMs? And I think that was the kind of exactly the wrong question that we asked, because we need to start kind of what is the problem that we want to solve, right? And kind of I think, you know, when we started to think about the problems, we first went kind of like everyone's mind goes to kind of chatbots, and it makes sense because all ChatGPTs, Geminis, whatever, they are all chatbots, and that's where the hype is. But if you think about that interface for the user, it's suboptimal, right? So what I'm thinking always when I see chatbots, I'm thinking command lines. I'm not thinking like, oh, this is the future. I'm thinking that this is not the best interface for me to, or not the most efficient interface for me to interact with the computer system. And the same thing applies on the output of these AI systems, is that we shouldn't restrict ourselves into thinking that we just want text that we can then ingest. Because, there's a reason why we have, Windows, why we have Macs, why websites why they aren't just, a bunch of text, why we have slides with images. It's because people, ingesting knowledge is so much easier and faster when you do have, illustrations, images, the text is, really thought out, kind of how do you want to present it. And this was kind of a really big understanding for us, is to detach ourselves from just a text-based input. And that brings us to the next thing that we realized, which is that we shouldn't also think these systems as, just text in, text out, but more of a reasoning machines. Even though there's no one in that machine, they can do really awesome reasoning. So by combining these models into heuristic processes, you can do something really magical to the users. And also, if you think about kind of like just hiding, the functionalities, not showing any kind of chatbots, interfaces, whatever, and apply reasoning based on what the user is doing, you can start creating really, good experiences for the user where the user doesn't need to actually do anything to get value out of the system. And kind of when you think about those two things, just those two things, I think you can uncover the bulk of the value that these models can provide. I think then you're actually looking under the surface here, because then you can start doing like analyzing text, automating workflows, and doing way better recommendations as well. And kind of like a real world example about this would be, giving an example from our knowledge engine, and especially the AI search, because it's been talked about here as well, is that when you generate an answer to a user, you are generating a answer, but maybe not the answer. And that's the big problem that is difficult to make sure that we actually answer the correct way. We make sure that the user gets what they want. But in order to do that, you can apply heuristics, but it's very hard. But if you apply these AI models to that process itself, you can start asking them to verify the answer's correctness. And not only was it correct, but was it a full answer? Did the user get only a partial answer? And now when we understand those kind of things, we can start understanding that what knowledge is actually missing, instead of just looking at, what answers didn't get an answer, but we can see what answers got partial answers, for example. So there is still knowledge missing in that case. And these are the cases that I think are super interesting and kind of very kind of how to call them, game changers, even kind of when you apply this kind of reasoning to these normal processes. So to sum up, so when you do detach yourself from thinking these systems just as text-based and think about the optimal way that you can present actions and knowledge to the users and combine that with the reasoning capabilities, you can create a very cool and kind of valuable experience to the users. And if you're kind of interested in seeing more, I urge you to go to our website, happeo.com, and find there a place called Knowledge Engine. It's on the top navigation, and that really kind of like highlights how can you use this, how we use these kind of like findings in the process of knowledge management in Happeo. And that's it from me. So thank you.
Thank you, Anto. And now let's turn to questions from our viewers. And if you have a question, I'll remind you to put it into the question box and click the submit button. So let me start here. What is the best content to feed generative AI? John, you want to talk about that from your perspective?
Yeah, that's an interesting question, and especially since we just heard from some of our presenters specifically about how to curate or automate the ingestion for content for AI. And one of the things I said during my presentation, which is I like to think is echoed in a couple of the presentations here, is this notion that we have to rethink what content is. You know, prior to Gen AI, if you started asking what the best kind of content is, you'd start looking at content types and what do I need for my business. And now, as Antero was just pointing out, the questions start to shift to what kind of information do I need to aggregate and how can I aggregate it intentionally, or intelligently. So I guess to try to answer that question directly, you know, there's an easy short answer, which is the stuff I need for my business. But I also would argue that the more information you can use that already has some degree of pre-structural consistency, meaning, you know, it repeats the same comments over and over again. It's not like this big, long tome of text. Again, to Antero's point, you know, we're not trying to boil these things down into something. And David mentioned it earlier that, you know, there's these information objects are pretty unwieldy. So I would recommend, just as a general principle, to start looking for where there is processable or reasonable structure in information. Sure, Gen AI can do all kinds of magical things, but if we start looking at RAG, which frankly we're all talking about today, the first word is retrieval. And so without the ability for you to bring back something that's meaningful, then you're passing that level of inaccuracy to the model. So the short answer is look for some structures that your AI can readily grab onto and things that are repeatable enough that you get an idea of what you can expect. That's my relatively short answer.
David, best content to feed Gen AI?
Well, I think I would like to talk a little bit too about the content not to feed it. So for market intelligence and competitive intelligence, there are reliable vetted sources. This could be news sites that are industry focused, that know where the journalists write about the industry every day, and they can tell the difference between an important press release and a trivial one. There are market intelligence firms that publish terrific research firms that publish great research. There are government sites for things like SEC documents. There are websites for things like investor presentations. And the key is to collect the information that is best for the use case, but nothing else. Don't have the free and open web contributing to your solution. That is one of the issues I think with business use, enterprise use of ChatGPT. You do not want to rely on the World Wide Web for important business decisions. So on the one hand, as John said, have the content that makes sense for your use case, but on the other hand, don't have anything else, particularly in retrieval augmented generation, where only a portion of the content is going to be submitted to the model to generate the answers. It's very important to have focus, and that's where knowledge management comes in.
Brian, you want to weigh in on that?
I completely agree. Yeah, for content generation, there's lots of methods. We've had traditional machine learning for content generation, but now inserting Gen AI in the index pipeline. I'm talking from a technical perspective because I'm the solutions engineering leader. But our customers are now, like Costco, are just really increasing their product catalogs. But they also, our internal customers for employees are enriching documents at index time. So as data flows in, even with a prompt, you can write a Gen AI prompt like, what's this document about? Very general. Or extract the top 10 keywords out of this document, and then use those as facets or filters later down. So I think it's pretty important. And Gen AI has really opened up the game for content generation, I think.
Antero, what does Happeo think about the best content to feed generative AI?
Oh man, this is a really, really good question. I mean, it's I see so much, or I hear so much kind of difficulty from our customers to, like, they have the hopes of, why can't I just attach my SharePoint or Google Drive or whatever, my whole email to the system, and it will answer magically right every single time. And it just doesn't work. And it's because the AIs themselves, they don't know what's right. They have no concept of you. They don't know they just know what you tell them, right? So if you give them conflicting facts, they will just either tell them both or just pick one. And, that's the problem. So kind of what the best data to put into it, like, I don't think the format itself is a factor as far as I have seen. It's more of what is the method to make sure that what the AI gets fed is the right information. And that is very, very difficult. And that also kind of relates to, not only kind of what data sources. So kind of what data sources, what metadata do you kind of give to to create about the documents? Do you create some kind of a knowledge graph with traverses nodes to understand which information is related to which information? So no easy answer other than super important. It's a really a difficult thing.
Yeah. Yes, indeed. That leads interestingly into another question we have here. What are the risks of enterprises leveraging Gen AI? And I think I might add to that, are there risks with all of the generative retrieval methodologies and so on? How do we really ascertain what the risks might be? Let me start with Brian on that one.
Sure. Thank you. Yeah, for sure. The generative, I talked about the piece in my presentation about you get a generative response. You want to make sure and provide the source data. Like how did I form that answer? Because you can generate a hallucination with ChatGPT real easy, but it'll never tell you. It just, like I said, with confidence, answer the question. But if I'm a knowledge worker in an enterprise, ask a question, get a response, but how did you form that response? So the second double click, and you can even use the data enrichment we're using for customers with summarization of docs. Let's say it's a 10-page doc. We're going to summarize it in 2 or 3 paragraphs. So an employee can quickly review the summarizations to get to verify the answer. Another big risk is data leakage, enterprise data leakage. There was some PR OpenAI where some secure enterprise data got leaked and was using it as training data. So securing that in a private model, we're also advising to use private models, locked and secured, and no data goes public. That's another key risk. Another total cost of ownership risk is these Gen AI models can rack up really a lot of token pricing, indexing a lot of data, a lot of queries going in and out with Q&A. So advising the right model for the right use case is total cost of ownership advisement for lowering that cost risk for it.
David, I think you had a story about data leakage at one point.
Yeah,
internally.
One of the top consulting firms told me about one of their clients that had deployed Microsoft Copilot without paying attention to which folders it was allowed to index, which SharePoint folders, and it indexed the HR folder. A summer intern realized one day he could query Copilot and get anyone's salary in the company, which then within a day, all the summer interns were querying everybody's salary, bonus, stock options in the company. And then by the third day, every employee in the company was querying everybody's, and everybody was furious. People who were making less than their coworkers wanted to know why, and people who were making only a little bit more than their coworkers wanted to know why their difference wasn't bigger. And so, it was really a big problem. And that's an example of Copilot just running wild across the network, and not where the permissions were not managed. So it can happen. What we tell our clients in regards to the use of Gen AI for competitive intelligence and market intelligence is treat the model, the generative AI output, like you would a report from an eager summer intern, a smart but inexperienced summer intern who may not realize his or her answer is not right, but will often get it right and will always give you an answer. And so treat it the same way you would a report from a bright, eager summer intern, but vet any result you're going to rely on for your business strategy. Look for it to be from more than one document. Click through the documents and read them. You'll learn more if you do that than if you rely on the Gen AI output. But you're still way ahead of the game. But do not rely on results without verifying them. That is our advice.
Okay, good advice. John, you want to weigh in on risks?
Yeah, I think they've said a lot of the most important things. I'm trying to think about, from my perspective, a little bit more to David's point. Support agents are busy people. They're being pounded for trying to stay talk time to 5 minutes sometimes, and they've only got 60 seconds or less to find an answer. And so there needs to be, at this point about the intern writing the document, there needs to be really significant training on leveraging what these support agents do know, which is they're very expert in what their customers ask about. They talk on the phone about that all day, every day. But then not succumb to the risk of Gen AI, which is, oh, look at that. That looks like the answer. Here it is right here. I'm happy. Yeah. I'm ready to go. And one of the things David said, I think, is relevant, that I think all of us show the other results that you get back for looking at it. One of the things we're trying to do in our application is turn down the temperature. If those folks know what AI temperature is how varied the responses can be. Frankly, for support, we want almost zero temperature. We need a very consistent set of answers, even if we risk a little bit of leaving things out. So I'd say that the risk is really that, and to the point about indexing too many things, really looking very carefully at what the scope is of what you're defining, and also thinking carefully about training your users of how to use it. We think of it as, here's a really smart suggestion that should help you, but don't ignore that there may be a more actually useful answer that came back.
Okay, we have kind of an interesting question here. Do you ever see generative AI producing new ideas or solutions? Antero, have you seen anything?
Me personally, no.
No.
No, not really. I mean, it's
not really, because that's the thing that we keep hearing about, and you wonder about, well, how does that play out in real life? Brian?
No.
David?
This is Brian. I can answer one of the use cases we're deploying is that questionnaire Q&A conversational type of search. And how you do it in these large language models, you can build there's a big context window. You can send a lot of data and to get things like follow-up questions, like next best question to ask. So it's really big prompt. So you get the RAG and the retrieval. You bring up the top 5 or 10 documents to get the answer, the generative response. And then you can ask your follow-up question just like you can in ChatGPT. But then in that prompt, it generates the next 3 or 5 best questions to ask next. So you're having the Gen AI actually do your thinking for you a little, like, in example I gave about doing research with Gartner and Forrester and others, it was
Yeah.
like, all right, here's some other things you start thinking about: required capabilities and how it stacks up against competition and things like that. Those are automated questions that can spurn new ideas. It's all about insights with CAM, and that we believe. If you have Gen AI kind of spur those insights for the employee, maybe they can get their insight and answer a lot quicker, and maybe a better answer than they can formulate in their deck or email and things like that.
John, do you see AI producing new ideas, new solutions?
Well, I like what Brian answered there, that, it's a journey. And I think that we often think there's a one-to-one relationship of the answer and the information. The fact is that it's a journey through knowledge to absorb it. The only thing I would add to all this would be really interesting is, having just told you we turned the temperature way down on our AI processing, for authors and content curators, it would be interesting to turn the temperature up significantly, where it's got a little more creativity and span of what it brings back. And I think in that scenario, you might start to see some variations on an answer that you did not expect. And I'm saying, again, authors, people that are looking for other things to mine inside of large or complex content objects. That might be a direction that yields fruit. I'll admit I haven't done it yet, but the more we talk about this stuff, the more creative ideas we get, right? So that's another area of inquiry.
Absolutely. Absolutely. David? New ideas?
I've worked with large language models every day for years, and with their predecessors like transformer models for years before that. I've never seen AI have an idea. Not once.
No.
I've seen it find really great ideas and combine ideas from other people, but I've never seen it have an idea. I'm not very worried they're going to take over the world, frankly. They won't have that idea unless we write articles that give them the index. Then they'll think, oh, we could do this. But without that, it's not going to happen. So, yeah, they're not very creative, which is why it's so important to have the right content, because there are a lot of people with many great ideas, and the machines are fantastic at finding those and summarizing them. They don't think, they don't create new analysis, but boy, they're good at serving up the good analysis that human beings have done.
Well, great. Okay. Well, that is all the time we have for questions today, unfortunately. And we apologize. We were unable to get to all of your questions, but as I stated earlier, all questions will be answered via email. And I would like to thank our speakers today: John Schmay, Senior Director, KM Strategy, Verint; David Cease, CEO, Northern Light; Brian Land, Vice President, Sales Engineering, Lucidworks; Antero Hanarova, Founder and Chief Innovation Officer, Happeo. If you would like to review this event or send it to a colleague, please use the same URL that you used for today's event. It will be archived for 90 days. Plus, you will receive an email with the URL to view the webinar once the archive is posted. If you would like a PDF of the deck, go to the handout section once the archive is live. Thank you again for joining us.